most part, we don't have any money because of what I cited earlier. The average net worth of an African-American family in America is like $17,000 versus the average for white families of $180,000. In Boston, it's even worse. It's about $230,000 average for a white family. And in Boston, the average net worth for a black family is $8. I didn't say 80, I didn't say 80, I didn't say 800, I said $8. And what we still see, therefore, is this problem that we have in becoming entrepreneurs, and then when we do become entrepreneurs, being able to go through what I call the 7 stages of entrepreneurship, ideation, and so forth. Relative to his question, answering this question though, when I wrote this note, one of my white colleagues said to me, what's the difference between a black entrepreneur and a white entrepreneur? And as I've written in this note, there are 2 things that are different. One is that I've already stated to you before, and that is we don't have any money. It's not because we're lazy, it's not because we don't have any ideas, but because what has been done to us then and exactly what is being done to us today. But the other difference is that white entrepreneurs are not faced with what I term racial concealment, and that is hiding the fact that they're black. John Johnson had to do that. We saw him in the video. He had to do it when he bought the building on Michigan Avenue. He had to get a white man to come in with him as he posed as a janitor to inspect the building. And the white man looked like he was the buyer of the building. Now that was 40, 50 years ago. Does it happen today? Absolutely. Robert Smith, and we've all heard about Robert Smith. Robert Smith gave all of that money to the Morehouse graduating class this past summer. Robert Smith has a firm that manages over $40 billion of capital. And Robert Smith, if you go to his website, Vista Investor, if you go to his website, you will not see a photo of a picture of himself on that website. And the reason, he said, and Robert Smith is worth several $billions. He said he didn't want whites not to do business with him when they looked on there and saw he was a black man. So we still see that racial concealment being an aspect of black entrepreneurship like no other group. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know why we'd ever puzzle ourselves to ask ourselves, are we under attack or under siege? I mean, it's not even a question. So I think there are generations that didn't believe. You know, I think there are generations that didn't believe Trayvon was real. I think our collective thought, in media, they go, you know, you have Burrell, and then all of a sudden there aren't any Burrells except for one. Right. They've expanded their agencies, the number of digital agencies, the number of ad agencies, and yet we've shrank ours. Are we under siege? Of course we are. They come up with a new concept. They say, well, it's total market. And then none of us call, I mean, and it's probably because you don't know, to say, hey, Starbucks, are you going to advertise with any black companies, but we all carrying their cups. Nobody's written to Roz and the people at Starbucks and say, we want to make sure that of what we're spending our dollars, and so as long as we're quiet economically, as long as we have no demands, then our children and our children's children will be faced with worse, because now they can have a bod, they can have an avatar, they can clone your voice, and they can sound like you, all the way from India. So I think the manipulation is more than we can see on the film, because it's now digital and it's not real. So that's how hard, when you think about this election, we're going to have a whole community. And you've got 2 to 3 generations that don't believe in black. They become race neutral on issues that are just crazy. You know, how do you race neutral on something like Trayvon? How did you go race neutral? You know, people wonder, how do you get excited about a hug after you just watched your brother get killed sitting in his house? These aren't new. This happened last week. So I think when you think of women, Sandra Bland, and you try to tell young sisters, cool out. It didn't just happen. This is current day. These lynchings happen current day. These assassinations happen current day. And we can't relax. And we have to be much more vocal about how important it is economically for us to benefit. We're not acting as receipt shareholders. If you do business with somebody, they should do something with your community, and you should demand it.
Love it. Yeah.
Let me also talk about the reason that black entrepreneurship is important today, just like it was before, is because what we know is, we know that the largest employer of black people in America is the government. We know that the second largest employer of black people in America are black-owned businesses. So it is not just simply about symbolism. This is about our livelihood. This is about our communities being healthy. You know, there's an old adage that says, and I go around the world talking about the virtues of entrepreneur, and I talk about entrepreneurs being my personal heroes and sheroes, and black entrepreneurs in particular, because people who are successful as entrepreneurs, they do well for the community as they do good. I mean, they do good for the community as they do well for themselves. They create jobs, and people who have jobs are self-sufficient, and self-sufficient people live in healthy communities. So that's why this is so doggone important to our community and so desperately needed for us not only just to have more entrepreneurs, black entrepreneurs, but for those who are in existence like these two on both of my sides, it's imperative that they grow. We need them to grow so that they can continue to gain wealth as well as, and more importantly, create jobs for other people. So I just wanted to put that out there in terms of symbolism. We can no longer afford symbolism. It now has to be, to his point, what's the quid pro quo? What do we get out of this as black people? And it has to be my commitment to the uplifting of black people through entrepreneurship and business.
I love it. I love it. Go ahead and hang on to that. So the next question, I know you have a recent book that's about to come out,
right?
And it's titled
Entrepreneurial Finance. I teach entrepreneurial finance. I'm from born and raised in the Inglewood community here. So I'm a Chicago native. I'm the son of Ali Mae Rogers. There's a scholarship here at Chicago State University in my mother's name, who never graduated from high school. And it's for black women who focus their energies on business. But my book is titled Entrepreneurial Finance. And I focus on, with Professor and Dean Collins here to my right, he and I have been business partners and friends for the last 30 plus years. When I got out of business school, I bought my first company 2 years after getting out of business school. And 2 years after that, he was my banker at South Shore Bank. And we've been friends ever since then. I'm 62 years old. I think he's older than me. No. But my book is called Entrepreneurial Finance, and I'm touring the country right now, speaking at historically black colleges, doing a workshop on the topic of entrepreneurial finance, because entrepreneurial finance is the most popular topic that's taught at graduate business schools in the country. Harvard Business School is the most popular. When I was at Kellogg, it's the most popular in terms of student enrollment. But the reality is, most entrepreneurs don't know very much about entrepreneurial finance. And they learn on the job, and what we know is that when you learn on the job, it's quite inefficient, it wastes a lot of money. And what we also know from research is 83% of all business owners will pivot one time or another. They'll pivot at least once, meaning they'll change their business model possibly, change their business plan. But in order to pivot, you gotta have money. And therefore, we need to know as much as possible, as quickly as possible, about entrepreneurial finance so that we can improve our chances for success instead of making mistakes on the job. So my book is titled Entrepreneurial Finance. It's the 4th edition that'll come out in March. McGraw-Hill is the publisher, and I'll be here teaching the entrepreneurial finance for black entrepreneurs. I'll be here teaching at CSU. I think we're going to do it in the spring in March. I was hopeful of doing it before the end of the year, but it looks like I was speaking to the young lady that we'll do it at in March. But I'm a strong advocate of, and I'm going to steal a question that I know you have, and that is, what can people do? You must learn finance. You must learn the fundamentals of finance. Research shows when entrepreneurs who have failed, most entrepreneurs will fail. Okay, it's a rite of passage, unfortunately. Okay, but when they were asked, why did you fail? The most popular reason given was because of lack of training. It wasn't lack of money. It was I didn't have enough knowledge about what I was doing, and then when I learned how to do things the right way, I had run out of money. So it is imperative that we do proactively learn the topic of finance. Finally, entrepreneurs will ask, where do you spend most of your time as a business owner? They said, I spend most of my time on financial matters. Then they were asked, what do you know the least about? Financial matters. We have to master this topic. It is not brain surgery. I majored in history in college, and I teach finance now, entrepreneurial finance. So everybody can master this topic.
No, thank you, thank you. Bunsen, share with us best business advice you received as an entrepreneur.
Pay your taxes. I've got books over here to sell, my children's books. When you talk about pivot, I think it's all about innovation and having a purpose. And so we do more in digital media than we have ever done in print. I can touch 30 million people in a month, or I can touch a million in print. I can have you watch a video, I can know who you are. Big data is what's happening. I just think that for us, and I applaud brother talking about finance, but I think process probably sinks most ships. At the end of the day, most entrepreneurs, including myself, don't have process, and finance is part of that. If your money flow's not happening and you don't have the right accountant and you don't have the right team, you probably aren't going to have processes. So if you have what I would consider a franchise, they got a process. They eliminate your financial issues because they're going to collect their money. I think our processes have to be at the highest level so that your checks and balances, people can't steal from you. You have your inventory. You're able to forecast.